This is Common Filth Extra, episode 16. Thank you very, very much for listening. Thank you for supporting what I do. It means a lot to me, and I sincerely mean every word that I have said. And I sincerely mean every word that I speak. Why do you bother saying stuff you don't mean? I get using sarcasm for comedic effect or whatever, but look, I'm ironic, I'm this, I'm that. I don't get it. Isn't that exhausting? Hiding behind how you really feel? It's not a big deal to feel. Feel. Say how you feel. You're human. You're human. You're the good human. You're the wonderful human being. It's a big stuff white people like word I understand because it's gender neutral, but it still has man in it. So maybe not enough. But yeah, we all feel things. We all have these stupid emotions. We all get sad. We all get happy. We're all put off by certain things. Some stuff makes us mad. And so many people out there, young people especially, they're afraid to express these things. And I don't understand why. But we're getting way off track here. So I got this new book in. Libido Dominandi. I've not read it yet. I got it in just today. And I'm picking it up, examining the cover. It's called Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control by E. Michael Jones. That is by E. Michael Jones. And I'm just going to open it up. I'm going to open it up and start reading because sexuality is something I talk a lot about. I talk about it a lot. I am fascinated by why people view this as the greatest thing. Why it's considered like you can't say anything. Like, I remember when I read like libertarian web magazines and shit, being a fag was like the greatest thing to them. That was like the ultimate expression of freedom. And and that sewage pipe of ideas has leaked, and it has spread throughout the rest of the culture since I was first introduced to that sentiment. And I found it very prevalent amongst far too many people. So I've opened it up here. This is a over 600 page book, by the way, so this is going to take me a while to read, but it is something that I want to cover because I think this would help explain a lot of the things that I've talked about on my show in a more academic sense, I suppose. So I opened it up here. The reason for this is, upon reflection, simple enough. Masturbation to pornography is more profitable than the other two options. It is more financially lucrative than any other sexual option, including prostitution, to which it is obviously related both etymologically and otherwise. In an age in which the technological reproduction of images becomes ever more realistic, and an age in which these images can be delivered electronically into the home of everyone who has a computer and in the future to everyone who has a TV, the possibilities for financial exploitation are too lucrative to ignore. And with financial exploitation goes political control. Financial exploitation is the nose of that camel. Perhaps this is why Tisdale is so insistent on making masturbation synonymous with sex. For her, in fact, all sex is essentially masturbatory. In this sense, she writes, all sex is masturbation. The other person's body is an object by which we have intense but wholly internal pleasure, and our orgasm is a self-created and unshared universe. This may be the best explanation for why the orgasms of masturbation can be more powerful and feel more physically whole than those shared. They are simply safer. Well, that explains so much of how people view other people, of how man views woman, woman views man, and how deranged women and men view other women and men. How can you trust anybody that views, like, how can you trust a man that views his fellow man as a cum dump? I don't understand how you could trust somebody who views man in such a perverse way. And this is the exact mentality. They're just a means of masturbation. That people are just a hole. to use for friction to get your jollies. So I'll continue reading this. Again, we have the no muss, no fuss approach that equates sex with ready-made cake mixes. Along the way, sexual autonomy is defined in terms indistinguishable from sexual isolation and bondage. And the only thing that makes the justification halfway plausible is the cliches of Madison Avenue and the ACLU. As with abortion, which is portrayed as safer than childbirth, pornography is portrayed as safer than marriage. Missing from the equation is the violence it is, and the violence it causes in those who become addicted to it. As for using pornography as a blueprint for violence, Tisdale tells us, not only are such images hard to find, I think this belief supposes far more concentration on the part of impulsively violent people than reality should warrant, and how many murderers have been inspired by religion. And that's unquote. This brings us to the other purpose of the stroke book for ladies, namely, their role in attacking Mies' Commission on Pornography and the feminists who collaborated with it. The same rules apply here as elsewhere. If you want to undermine the position of the Catholic Church, the best way to do it is to create a front group, something like Catholics for Free Choice, an entity funded by pharmaceutical houses which make contraceptives. If you want to undermine the idea that pornography victimizes women, you need a woman to convey that message. All of that testimony of women like Linda Borman at the Mies Commission hearings was being erased from cultural record by the memoirs of the wanking women. By 1985, Palak writes, the Mies Commission recommended greater restrictions of sexually explicit material based on the unconfirmed theory that pornography causes harm. I stopped to turn the page here. Andrea Dworkin and Catherine McKinnon proposed anti-porn ordinances in Minneapolis, Indianapolis, and Cambridge, Massachusetts that would allow women to sue for damages for the harm caused by pornography. All three were ultimately voted down, but were a big success at stirring up fear. Censorship continues to be promoted as a necessary defense against the monsters who lurk somewhere out there. Was Chuck Traynor a monster? Rather than answer this question honestly, Palak omits any real account of the suffering of women like Linda Borman and the numerous women who testified before the Mies Commission about how they were injured by boyfriends trying to imitate what they saw on screen. That is... man. You know, this is the problem with harm-based morality, is that it narrowly defines harm, as in, oh, did you hurt me physically? Not realizing that people have souls, they have spirits, they have brains, nervous systems that tell them when something is wrong. That tells them something is wrong, what they're doing to themselves is wrong morally, if they have one. I mean, I'm aware that because people have children so late in life now, a lot of people born now are they're dead. And by that I mean autistic. They are spiritually and emotionally dead. And a lot of people, they become spiritually and emotionally dead, probably because, in part, due to excessive, constant pornography consumption. It's like I see people like talking about like how they masturbated 4 times, in a single day. Like it's nothing. Like everybody does that, and people think that's not causing any harm. That's not that's not an addictive, self-destructive behavior. I wonder if E. Michael Jones in this book talks about the addictive nature of sexual depravity. Now, if you're constantly chasing that high for the sake of that high, and okay, it feels good at first, but then it feels less and less and less, and you got to do it more and more and more until you're getting a goat and you're going to Mexico to a donkey show. I think the nature of sexual immorality. Watch the movie Event Horizon and take note of the blood orgy scene. That's the end game. There's a reason why that scene, that's the portrayal of hell. Because that's where the hedonists, that's where the constant pleasure seekers, that's the inevitability. That's what they want for themselves. Eventually it will lead to blood orgies. So the Mies, I need to look into this Mies Commission thing, actually. I'll read. Rather than tell the truth about the people who have been hurt by porn, Palak tries to tie the Mies Commission to the repressive 50s instead. Who really wants to go back to, say, the 1950s when blacks had to ride in the back of the bus? When Senator Joe McCarthy destroyed people's lives in his hunt for suspected communists, Joe McCarthy was right and he did nothing wrong. When people chose to die rather than talk about their depression, come out of the closet, deal with their alcoholism or any number of sensitive issues, because those realities just didn't fit into the precious picture of the all-American family. I know, I don't. What kind of idiot? Oh, people killed themselves because they're afraid to talk about their depression. Are you shitting me? Wow, people, they didn't want to talk about their bull fucking shit. I mean, look, the 50s were a dead cat bounce. I'm no real fan of the 50s due to how fragile the culture was. But it's like, oh, coming out of the closet, what will that change for you? Again, it all ties in with this, well, I'm sinning and people need to know about it. What the fuck is wrong with you? Well, that's going to change the fact that you feel this profound amount of guilt for this abomination you're committing? Fuck off. I'm glad you fuckers commit suicide. You are not of God's elect. You people who are like, oh, let me just tell people about the depraved shit I do. That'll fix it. That'll fix my woes. You deserve the suicide that you will eventually commit. You were put on this earth to serve as an example of what this lifestyle will create. Now, I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not afraid to say that some people are born to be engaging in blood orgies in hell. I know I don't. You don't want to fit into what? An ideal? You don't want to strive towards something that's decent? Look, you're not going to get there. But even a bullseye that's off the mark is still it's not dead center. Even a bullseye that's not dead center is still a bullseye. Right? And then E. Michael Jones responds to that with, nor does the industry which publishes Miss Palak's memoirs, and this is true for one simple reason. The Mies Commission did considerable damage to the pornography industry in this country. See, this is the first time I've heard of this Mies Commission. And I'm in front of my computer. I'm going to type this in once I'm done reading this. All of these stroke book ladies mentioned Dworkin and McKinnon, who in many ways became victims of their own ideological excesses, but along the way created a whole new front for combating pornography, one which rose out of the ideological bosom of the left, and so for a while left the industry without an effective response. In addition to the feminist attack on pornography, activists from the other end of the political spectrum were increasingly successful in organizing boycotts of convenience stores, which resulted in ever-dwindling sales of Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustler as the 80s progressed. Wow, this is all really fascinating, and this adds another dimension to anti-feminism, of which I'm a part of that. I've criticized feminism. I'm not going to revise any of those criticisms. But, broken clocks twice a day. That's a whole new dimension. There are a lot of wankers out there who, like, I'm anti-feminist. Anita Sarkeesian, she's evil. There's a lot of people out there who are advocates for the porn industry, advocates for sex workers. So that the feminist anti-pornography thing is very interesting when put into context of modern anti-feminism, present day anti-feminism, rather. So Mies Commission. Let's try this. Mies Report. All right. Let's see what Wikipedia has to say. Let's see how they've washed it. This barely says anything. Final report of the Attorney General's Commission on Pornography, usually referred to as the Meese Report, is the result of a comprehensive investigation into pornography ordered by U.S. President Ronald Reagan. That's why people hate Ronald Reagan. He wants to take away my cummies. Do you know that homosexuals are very reliable? They're very reliable. I have friends. I have lots of gay friends, so I know that when they talk, let me tell you something about this. The homosexual voice sounds like a fucking bug zapper, an electric bug zapper. It drives the shit out of me. Now, let me tell, and whether or not this is a put on, I've heard people say this. That the gay voice is a put on, it's fake. How do you know that? You hang out, you prefer the company of these people. You hang out with them extensively. You spend your time with them. You spend a significant amount of time with these people. That's the only reason why you know that. So whenever somebody's like, ooh, white pride gays, they do this and that. I have a lot of gay friends. Like, well, how the fuck are you going to explain that? Like, if you have a wife, how are you going to explain that? Like, oh, I'm going to the bar with my friend who likes to suck dick. What the fuck? I don't know. That strikes me as a little bit odd. What homosexuals were reliable. The following report okay, who cares? The report divided into 5 parts and 35 chapters and details most aspects of the pornography industry, including the history of pornography and the extent of First Amendment protections. The report also documents what the committee found to be harmful effects of pornography and connections between pornographers and organized crime. That would not surprise me in the least, given its, never mind. The report was criticized by many inside and outside the pornography industry, calling it biased, not credible, and inaccurate. No, of course they would. Of course they would, because they view it as an enemy of freedom, right? The Meese Report was preceded by the reports of Presidents Lyndon B. Johnson and Richard Nixon's Commission on Obscenity and Pornography, which was published in 1970 and recommended loosening the legal restrictions on pornography. So, I could look at the full text here. The obscene, I like how their external links include like an anti-Meese Commission report thing by Pat Khalifa. Who are you? Oh boy. It's a very unbiased person, by the way. This person who wrote the anti-Meese Commission report. Pat Khalifa, born 1954. Formerly also known by the last name Califia Rice. It's Califia, pardon me. Is an American writer of non-fiction essays about sexuality and of erotic fiction and poetry. Khalifa is a bisexual trans man. Of course. Oh, man. An essay criticizing the Meese Report. Very good Wikipedia. Very good. Why isn't this loading? Shit. Now I have to type that in again. Full text. Full text on pornreport.com. That's not there. Okay, now finally it loads. Damn, what a shitty website. I have to open PDFs. Great. Oh, no I don't. Okay. I'll just skim through this. Why not? I'm just gonna scroll to a random page like I just did with the book. Yeah, I heard that Michael Savage talked about that. He talked about how he was interviewed by Larry King when he was doing medical books, nutrition books. And he talked about Larry King's interview style when he's interviewing someone. He doesn't read the book prior. He actually opens up the book right there. Which I guess makes sense because that's how you'd look at it if you were in the bookstore. So, the text on here is too big. And this is a pretty long report, actually. I doubt that trans man fucking read this thing, by the way. Because I scrolled down to... Fuck, there's there's like over 500 pages here. So we'll just jump to the middle. Because at the I went to the end, it was just like citations and whatnot. Sexually explicit magazines. Well, that doesn't have much modern relevance, does it? And again, we're reading the Meese report right now. Okay, varieties of evidence, sure. We've looked at a wide range of types of evidence. Some has come from personal experience of witnesses, some from professionals whose orientation is primarily clinical. We have not categorically refused to consider any type of evidence, and choosing instead to hear it all, consider it all, and give it the weight we believe in the final analysis it deserves. No form of evidence has been useless to us, and no form is without flaws. A few words about the advantages and disadvantages of various types of evidence may help put into perspective the conclusions we reach and the basis on which we read them. Most controversial has been the evidence we received from numerous people claiming to be victims of pornography and reporting it in some way on personal experiences relating to pornography. In later portions of this report concerned with victimizations and with the performers in pornographic material, we discuss this evidence in more detail. We have considered this first-hand testimony, much of it provided at great personal sacrifice, quite useful, but it is important to note that not all of the first-hand testimony has been of the same type. Okay, fine. Some of the first-hand testimonies come from users of pornography, and a number of witnesses have told us how they became addicted to pornography, or how they were led to commit sex crimes and as a result of exposure to pornographic materials. Although we have not totally disregarded the evidence that has come from offenders, in many respects it was less valuable than other victim evidence and other evidence in general. Much research supports the tendencies of people to externalize their own problems by looking too easily for some external source beyond their own control. As with more extensive studies based on self-reports of sex offenders, evidence relying on what an offender thought caused his problems likely to overstate the external, and so understate the internal as to be of less value to us other evidence. Okay, well, let's just get to the nitty-gritty. Come on, where's the nitty-gritty? We're page... Okay, evidence. I want to know your evidence. Come on. I know you have to be thorough, but 1980, whatever it was. People in 1980, whatever it was. Okay, here's something that'll be interesting. This is section 5.2.1, sexually violent material. The category of material on which most of the evidence has focused is the category of material featuring actual or unmistakably simulated or unmistakably threatened violence present in sexually explicit fashion, with a predominant focus on the sexually explicit violence. Increasingly, the most prevalent forms of pornography, as well as an increasingly prevalent body of less sexually explicit material, fit this description. Some of this material involves sadomasochistic themes with the standard accoutrements of the genre, including whips, chains, devices of torture, and so on. But another theme of some of this material is not sadomasochistic, but involves instead the recurrent theme of a man making some sort of sexual advance to a woman, being rebuffed, then raping the woman, or in some other way violently forcing himself on the woman. And this was back in the 80s. Back when we were, what percentage point European in America, of European stock? In almost all of this material, whether in magazine or motion picture form, the woman eventually becomes aroused and ecstatic about the initially forced sexual activity, and usually is portrayed as begging for more. There's also a large body of material, more quote-unquote mainstream in its availability, that portrays sexual activity or sexually suggestive nudity coupled with extreme violence, such as disfigurement or murder. Oh boy. The so-called slasher films fit this description, as does some material both in films and in magazines that is less or more sexually explicit than the prototypical slasher film. It is with respect to material of this variety that the scientific findings and ultimate conclusions of the 1970 Commission are least reliable for today, precisely because material of this variety was largely absent from that Commission's inquiries. Well, was that due to a lack of its existence, or just due to ignorance of its existence? It is not, however, absent from the contemporary world, and it's hardly surprising that conclusions about this material differ from conclusions about material not including violent themes. Well, this stuff exists. It existed back then. You know, it's like people don't understand like the First World War was the signal that it is over. I mean, look, we were a supernova of a civilization, but we rejected the restraint that made it so great. We rejected the moral framework that made our civilization possible. I mean, look at the 20s. Look at the 20s. It was horribly degenerate, horribly depraved, which led to the motion picture industry Hays Code of the 1930s. People were sick of that shit. They made movies about how being a slut, a cum dump, led you to a ruinous fate. So there was a little bit of a reaction towards that. But the damage, I think, was already done. You can't put the genie back into the bottle, so to speak. I mean, on a cultural level. You see, God made different tribes to give them their time. He says, you glorify me, you run your culture through me, you'll be fine. You'll do great things. I will reward you for that. And I've read something really neat. Biology can be changed, culture cannot, society cannot. And I agree with that. God says you're not doing good anymore. Your time is up. Happened with the Jews, happened with the Arabs. It's happening with whites now. And the first crack in the armor, probably not World War I, but I guess that's when the Corps started to really show its decay. You'd say French Revolution, yeah, that was another big sign. And look, a lot of people out there who are tribally focused will say to me, you're being defeatist, you're being this, you're being that. You as an individual can be redeemed. But your tribe, the mass consciousness of that tribe, it's gone. So quit wrapping up your value in that. Quit placing what you value most in that tribe, because it's done. You have to value yourself as an individual, independent of whatever fucking group you belong to. It's like, I don't get it. We say like, oh, people of color, they're hostile towards ideals like free speech. What, white people aren't? England, 85% white still. Despite all the bullshit they put themselves through, still 85% white, yet they throw people in jail for posting stuff on the internet. For tweets. For saying words. And this, a very obvious sign of moral decay that this report has to be done. That the conditions were so necessary that this is an actual thing that needed to be written, that needed investigating. In America, how white was America? Back in the 1980s, still pretty lily white. I mean, maybe like an off-white, but still there, still on the spectrum. So what else do we have here? Finding a link between aggressive behavior towards women and sexual violence, whether lawful or unlawful, requires assumptions not found exclusively in the experimental evidence. We see no reason, however, to not make these assumptions. The assumption that increased aggressive behavior towards women is causally related for an aggressive population to increased sexual violence is significantly supported by the clinical evidence, as well as by much of the less scientific evidence. Citation below. They are also, to all of us, assumptions that are plainly justified by our own common sense. This is not to say that all people with heightened levels of aggression will commit acts of sexual violence, but it is to say that over a sufficiently large number of cases, we are confident in asserting that an increase in aggressive behavior directed at women will cause an increase in the level of sexual violence directed at women. Okay, well, let's skip ahead even more. Why not? I don't know why this website's loading so slowly. Everything else is loading fine. Patrick Khalifa. Khalifa is a member of... I'm going to read this again. Khalifa, excuse me, is a bisexual trans man. Prior to transitioning, he identified as lesbian, and as such wrote many years as a sex advice column for the Gay Men's Leather magazine Drummer. Great. His writings explore sexuality and gender identity, and have included lesbian erotica and works about BDSM subculture. Khalifa is a member of the third wave feminism movement, of course you are. Occupation, former writer, former marriage and family therapist. Khalifa was born in Corpus Christi, Texas in 1954 and grew up in Utah in a Mormon family. Started transitioning in 1999, for fuck's sake. Oh, and by the way, Khalifa's sense of difference began when he was a child. He had dreams of becoming a train engineer, which his parents shot down because he was born female. Bullshit. If it meant that much to you, you would have just fucking done it. God, you're proving your fucking idiot femininity. Somebody discouraged me from doing it, so I'm gonna not do it. Any excuse to bail, they'll use. This is one of the more fundamental differences between man and woman, and why woman needs man. The ability to commit to something. To say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it, we're going to fucking do it. Setting upon a course of action, regardless of the cons, regardless of the road bumps that might occur, taking that path. Take fucking charge. You dipshit. No, now I'm a man. I'm mean. By the way, transitioning in 1999. You're born in 1954. You're a grown person by this point. And a former marriage and family therapist. Jesus, how many families have been ruined to this fucking cunt? What else? The rot has just been so obvious for so long. I just skipped all the way to the end again. I would like to know if some of the civil rights approach to pornography. Oh my god. Oh, this is where they mentioned the Andrea Dworkin and Catherine McKinnon thing, which was in Libido Dominandi, which I highly recommend. And the reason I found this, not the reason, how I found this, was in a Nobody TM video, actually, where Nobody TM included a clip from an interview from the author. And if you search Libido Dominandi on YouTube, you should be able to find this interview rather easily. It's an hour long. Highly recommended. And just from reading that 2 pages of the book, I'm going to recommend the book right now. Go on Amazon, get it. That's what I did. Actually, I want to go back to that. Patrick Khalifa. The Obscene, Disgusting, and Vile Mies Commission Report by Pat Khalifa, an essay criticizing the Mies Report. Let's see the criticisms of it. Our Teflon 19 again. It's just. Our Teflon president and his Attorney General Edwin There Is No There, Mies III, have thrown a big juicy bone to the mad dogs of the New Christian Right. Yeah, a lot of good they did, huh? A lot of successes they had against your filth, huh? It's just temporary victories in battles that mean nothing. Because there are people who are real hardline about it. And the problem is they don't have the average, whatever kind of person. The average person doesn't give a shit about Christian morality, the very basis of our civilization. They don't. The Justice Department recently appointed a commission with the mandate to overturn the 1970 Presidential Commission on Pornography's findings that there is no evidence of a link between sexually explicit materials and delinquent or criminal behavior. But we do have a link between antisocial behavior and pornography and infertility, impotence, and all this other dysfunctional shit. The final report of this new commission, published in July 1986, holds out the hope that by using draconian measures against pornography, we can turn America into a rerun of Leave It to Beaver. What is this? What is the obsession with 1950s? Ooh, they want to take us back to the 50s. The 50s. Ah, the 50s. Ah! The commission's findings should placate the lowest common denominator of the citizenry who made a drugstore cowboy our chief executive. Those folks who believe the Bible should be taken literally, but the First Amendment should not. Again, what is pornography saying? How is pornography speech? You fucking retard. In a press conference to announce the selection of commission members, Mies claimed that since 1970, the content of pornography has radically changed with more and more emphasis upon extreme violence. Maybe that's the case and maybe it's not. But what we could say for sure is that even if it did exist in 1970, it wasn't brought to their attention. He also claimed that his commission has not come to their task with minds made up. Their job is to approach the issues objectively in any whatever. In any recommendation the commission makes, it will carefully balance the need to control the distribution of pornography with the need to protect very carefully First Amendment freedoms. Again, pornography is not speech. It's just like, here's some tits, here's a vagina, here's a cock, here's some cum. That's it. That's all. The statement was not reassuring. Okay. What the fuck are you on about? What's your point? Let's just skip to the beginning. End here, rather. The flaws of pornography make it difficult to defend. Much of it is sexist, made under poor working conditions, overpriced, and controlled by the mafia. But you can't fix any of these problems by making it even more illegal and harder to get. The more marginal, the more persecuted porn is, the worse it will become. And the new producers who are gambling with non-sexist, challenging material will be squeezed out of business. Now, I don't get it. You're defending pornography because you're defending pornography because of the people who are attacking it. That evil bigot Ronald Reagan. That evil bigot Ronald Reagan's attacking it. That's why it's wrong. That's what I just skipped to the end. What? Fucking... You people are mentally ill. That's it. That's all. Yeah, sexist, under poor working conditions, overpriced, controlled by mafia. Yeah, why wouldn't you want to restrict that? Why would you not want to destroy a revenue stream of organized crime, you fucking retard? Especially since porn is not speech. What is porn saying? It's not saying anything. It's like tits, pussy, cock, ass. That's it. Apparently showing the human anatomy at its most compromised is speech. Okay, fine. That's the culture I live in. That's what I live with. The commission made skillful use of a vague and ever broader definition of child pornography to smear material that depicts and is intended only for the use of adults. Again, I don't... What? Oh, child pornography is also for children. Okay, it's still child pornography, you fucking retard. Haha, look at these backward new Christian right bigots. It's 1986. Child porn is for kids. What a retard. Any sexually explicit material which adults might show to children to teach them about sex or seduce them into sexual activity was referred to as child porn. Well, yes, if you're laying it out in a very clinical kind of way, it's not pornography. It's not intended to arouse. It is simply, this is how human anatomy works. The term also came to include cartoons or drawings of children, photographs of adult models who made it up to look like children. Yeah, well, that's the intent of it, to make it seem like child porn, except within the bounds of the law, within the boundaries of the law. So yeah, it isn't they're just wanting to make it, but not get put in jail for it. Or the contents of a dial of porn or cable television, if children have gained access to these media. Commissioners coined a new phrase, children between the ages of 18 and 21 who presumably need as much protection as prepubescents. Yeah, have you seen your average 18 to 21-year-old? They're fucking retards. Who might be worse than children. Because we have this expectation that they should be more. Yeah, they are children, you fucking retard. The commission would like to use the current child pornography law as a precedent to control a wider range of adults-only material. New York versus Ferber allows images of actual children to be banned even if they are not obscene. Okay, so The final report suggests new categories of material that could be prescribed in a similar fashion. For example, sexually violent material. All images of S&M activity will almost certainly vanish over the next year as it becomes a category verboten as kiddie porn. Good. You may not care if there are no more magazines full of whip-wielding ladies in leather corsets, but don't forget that WAP used Ferber to justify its civil rights anti-porn ordinance and would like to ban many kinds of non-obscene sexually explicit. This is a woman that thinks she's a man. So what do I expect? Do I expect something that makes sense? Non-obscene, sexually explicit. It's go try to justify that to a cop as you're jerking off on the street corner. Is at 3 p.m. when kids are crossing the crosswalk. No, I'm just being sexually explicit. I'm not being obscene, bro. Are you fucking kidding me? On the grounds that they endanger women. Yeah, they do endanger women. The porn. Remember when we read the Brie Olson thing? You think that woman is she's a whole person? She's safe morally? Fuck off. What else? As shoddy as it is, the chilling effect of the commission report is already being felt. The commission had already planned to publish a list of distributors of pornography. Sears sent a letter to the 23 companies on the list informing them of this plan and warning that failure to reply would be taken as acquiescence. The companies were also sent anonymous excerpts from the testimony of Mississippi Minister Reverend Donald Wildman, whose newsletter targets a corporation that he feels sponsor filth, such as CBS, Time Inc., Coca-Cola, and Simon & Schuster. Southland Corporation, which had been under attack by Wildman and Jerry Falwell for 3 years, dropped Playboy, Penthouse, and all Penthouse publications from its... Wow, that's a lot of 7-Elevens. And there's even more now. 4,500 7-Eleven stores. Playboy, the American Booksellers Association, and the Council for Periodical Distributors Association filed a lawsuit that blocked publication of the list. But many other chains of food, drug, and convenience stores banished these magazines from their premises. This is nothing less than the return of the blacklist. How? These are the same people who celebrate when a faggot threatens to kill Christians over their opposition towards fag marriage. And look how the worm has turned. Every corporation, save for a handful of them, in irrelevant industries, promote faggotry. The height of sexual freedom. These people are overreacting to nothing. Temporary setbacks to the decay of the white race and Western civilization in general. The fact that this shit was on 7-Eleven shelves at some point, and we're lamenting the good old days. When, we were still horrible and lost and amoral, but at least we were horrible, lost, amoral, and white. What the fuck is wrong with you? Not you listening to this, but how many people? How many people think that you shouldn't focus on morality, that you shouldn't focus on conduct when this is what we deal with when we deal with people? Every day without exception, no matter who it is, behavior. Lamenting the loss of the good old days. Look, it's great that the Reagan administration produced something like this. Has anything comparable come after? I don't know. Somebody's going to have to dig into that one. Maybe I will. But ultimately, whatever the fuck your name was, the Pat Califias of the world, they won out. And are you okay with that? I'm not.